Much.
You got
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the April 17th Charter Review Committee meeting. This meeting was supposed to be on last Thursday, but it has been moved due to my mistake with the agenda. But here's our current agenda. We have one topics not anticipated item, and I will go through everyone to see if they can hear and be heard. I see Athena's here. Thank you. I can see that on the screen. Meg,
Present.
Bernie,
Present.
Erica,
present.
Marcus,
Present.
Ken.
Present, and I'm going to turn my screen off so I can eat my dinner. So I
No
apologize.
problem.
Thank you.
Andy.
We don't mind watching you eat your dinner.
Present. Speak for yourself, Meg.
Okay.
All right. I believe I got everybody.
I could hop off, Julia. I'm
Oh,
here.
sorry, Raphael.
Here.
Yes.
And Erica, did I get you?
You did.
Great. Okay, that's everyone. I will just give a few quick announcements, which is that both me and Raphael have some versions of the elected officials and staff questionnaire, and we will begin the discussion on budget coordinating group in the budget section in topics not anticipated, but will certainly not be the end of the discussion. It will keep coming up, as well as Meg and Erica. Meg and Andy met, so they have some documents to share with us about public feedback that we'll spend most of the meeting discussing. And then we will also discuss Erica's outreach schedule that is attached in the packet. So I will start. The minutes were in the packet. Have folks read over them? Both copies? I'm seeing head nodding. For the sake of time, I will make the motion to approve the March 27th meeting minutes.
Second,
Excellent.
even though I wrote them, I
Meg
still second
seconds,
it.
that's okay. Meg,
Yes.
myself, I'm an I. Bernie,
Yes.
Raphael,
Yes.
Erica,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Thank you. And then I will make the motion to approve the February 27th meeting minutes. Meg, go ahead.
Second and I, yes.
Okay,
Also,
great.
I have my hand up. I have my hand up for after this.
Oh, okay, got it. Other questions about the meeting minutes? No.
Just to suggest that we confirm who's taking minutes at this meeting so they can start, because from my experience, it's hard to start taking minutes halfway through the meeting.
Yes, thank you. I will get to that once we take this vote. Me, I'm an I. Bernie,
Yes.
Raphael,
Yes.
Erica,
Yes.
Andy.
I'm going to abstain since I was not here.
That's okay. Ken.
Yes.
Excellent. That is 7 in favor, 1 abstention. And I will now move us along to who is taking minutes, which, let me check my list. Erica, would you be able to take minutes?
Sure.
Thank you.
Julian, just one
No,
quick
well-
thing. One thing I would suggest is
Yep.
once the recording becomes available, it comes with a transcript of everybody by microphone, so it's got all your names. It is very easy to use certain AI capabilities to get it to write minutes for you. It's just a case of writing it up. I just worry that we lose people to focusing on minutes during these.
That makes sense to me. That's a good suggestion. I tried it. The transcript, you have to go through and watch to make sure it doesn't go too far off script, but you can use it and it is helpful if it's a tool for you. So moving on, any member announcements? No? Okay. Public comment. I see we have two people. Or no, three people.
Three.
Excellent. And we may have a fourth joining us. I'm not completely sure who would like to offer public comment. If you'd like to offer.
Did Julian kick himself off?
Julian, you're gone. We have two people with their hands up. I guess we should wait for Julian, though.
Yeah. He got too excited.
Erica, why don't you step in as vice chair? We can start
That's
if
fine.
you'd like.
So while Julian's coming back, why don't we just have our public comment session? And the first hand I see up is Martha Hanner, and we'll set a timer for 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Martha Hanner. I live in District 5, South Amherst, and I sent you all a memo yesterday with sort of my thoughts on the survey. If you really want to get a broad spectrum of people in our community, you know, it's necessary to do more than just an online survey, because that only gets the people who like to do online surveys, right? And so I hope that you would be distributing paper copies in public places or visiting groups and so on, and then also going to some public events where you could, you know, actually go around and talk to people and do sort of oral interviews. So I think you're already thinking some of those things, but I just thought I would jot them down. And then I think the most important thing is when you get to actually the time for the survey, I don't know whether you're going to allocate a month or something, that you really need to advertise that broadly and try to motivate people as to why it's important that they bother to take the time to do it. That's my experience. You know, you go with high expectations, and it's always disappointing that even though Amherst, where only the H is silent, you really often don't get as many people as you want unless you really advertise publicly with some catchy slogan and things, and go around to meetings and so on. And then, if you don't mind, if I say, since I see you've got the employee survey on your agenda tonight, my experience was that I was part of the solar bylaw working group. And for 18 months, we had two town employees, sustainability coordinator and planning board person, you know, listening with us. And then they spent a whole year sitting in with the town council committee that was supposed to be reviewing that. And it seemed to me it was a terrible waste of their time, because they were never asked to present their expertise or explain anything. And they had to do a whole lot of busy work when one particular counselor, Councillor Haneke, kept wanting to rewrite and do the wording, and they had to dutifully do it. So I hope that you will ask, in the employee survey, ask whether, you know, whether they feel they have open communication, whether they feel that their expertise is being solicited at appropriate times, and then whether they feel that their time is ever being wasted with sort of having to do busy work or provide reports that people could have looked up and so on, because it's not clear to me from my experience that our staff are always worked well. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Martha. Next hand I see Darcy Dumont. Darcy, I think you're muted still.
Sorry.
So I'll start the timer.
Okay. Hi, my name is Darcy Dumont. I live in District 3. I endorse those comments that Martha Hanner just made. I'm commenting as a former counselor and individual, and I also served on the League of Women Voters Charter Review Task Force for 2 years. I have 2 recommendations regarding Article 2 this evening. My first recommendation is that the charter should limit the number of consecutive terms served by a council president to 2 two-year terms, running the length of 2 legislative sessions, so a total of 4 years. I'm also suggesting that a legislative session be for 2 years instead of 1. The League of Women Voters also voted to limit the number of consecutive terms for the president, but did not include it in its recommendations because that recommendation was in conflict with a state league position. The relevant charter section is 2.2a. The rationale for possible charter amendment is that the power of the council president increases significantly with time in office. Also, change in the president's seat can allow for more diverse participation and emergence of new leaders. Currently, a council president could be elected in an uncontested race or in a small district race and nonetheless hold the council leadership position for an unlimited number of years. To be more democratic, representative, participatory, and diverse, there should be term limits to prevent any councillor from holding the office for unlimited terms. At the recent election of the president, councillors Devlin Gauthier and Haneke spoke forcefully about the reasons why the job of president should be shared by others. My second recommendation is that the charter should be amended to require that all councillors serve on the same number of major standing town council committees so that they have an equal voice and vote. The League of Women Voters also supported providing each councillor with an equal opportunity to have a voice and a vote on standing council committees. The relevant charter section is 2.6e. The rationale for a possible amendment is that the Amherst has several organized political groups and 2 official PACs. One PAC has endorsed a majority of the councillors in all 3 of the terms. The president appoints the members of the committees. Council committees should include equal participation of councillors elected to promote both full public participation in the democratic process and diversity of representation. The council experience is that we have 4 major standing committees. In 2025, several councillors neither serve as chair of any committee nor serve on more than one standing committee of the council. Membership on a committee gives a councillor a voice on that committee's recommendation back to the council. Councillors on 2 standing committees have twice as much voice as those on 1. Also, the council rules favor unanimous decisions made by 5 councillors on a standing committee to allow them on the consent agenda, giving even more power to councillors on those committees.
Darcy, we've crossed 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comment. And to Martha and to Darcy, I would strongly encourage that the comments also be submitted via the written public feedback comment form that we have available on the website, just to capture the full value of what you've had to say.
Hi.
I think that's all the public comments.
Excellent. Thank you, Erica, for chairing in my absence. My computer crashed. But please, Darcy and Martha, please send an email to all of us, and I'll happily read that. I apologize for missing your comments. I caught the last bit of yours, Darcy. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will now move on to number 4, which I am sort of proposing this as a time where I would ask the committee members if we could set a date in which we are going to start actually opening up the charter and reviewing it, and what date you all are comfortable with starting that process. I'd like for us to do that so that we have a timeline of when we can actually open up this document and start editing or discussing edits and proposing them, just so that the public can know when to tune in, and also so we as a committee can budget our time adequately. Any proposed dates, thoughts, comments? Meg?
I suggest that we not decide the date until we've discussed this timing of getting different kinds of outreach. So do we want to do that before we've received the surveys back from the town? The outreach committee is planning listening sessions very soon. So it seems to me that the timing of that discussion, while it's very important, would be more useful if it's well into when we've already been receiving comments from the public. I don't think that receiving publics from the comment will necessarily end, but so that we have a significant amount of feedback to inform that discussion.
Bernie?
I think I'm in agreement with what Meg just said. I'd like to note that former Councilor Dumont has posted to our website some extensive comments, as has current Councilor
Haneke.
Manicki. I would like to hear from everybody else who is either a counselor or has served as a counselor before we start pulling pieces of taking pieces of the charter. I think we'd learn a lot from those folks, having lived this for 2 years or more, trying to make it work. And I think the Darcy's comments, Mandy's comments are valuable. They're grist for the mill, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the subjects, if you will, who've taken it on to serve on the council and move forward.
Raphael?
I agree with the comments that have been made. I think spending time to review, getting more feedback or insights, perspectives, and then reviewing that before doing this work is important.
Andy?
Yeah, I agree with that, and well, I think we're going to look at a list of some feedback that we've received so far. Meg and I just went through the stuff that's come in writing to our website. We looked at it yesterday and put together a list of the kinds of things that people are asking about, and I think we'll get more of that as we do the survey of the town officials and staff, and as we do our planned, I think, open forums. And at that point, you get a list that's pretty, themes start to come out. Even in the short
Right.
list that we did, there are some themes that you start to see.
Right.
And I think that builds confidence among the public that we're actually listening before we're deciding what we should change.
Ken?
Yeah, I guess the very last part of what Andy said, I really want to have a better foundation of where comments are coming in. It's part of it's part of like a personal, like, what do I want to see change, but also gives me some guidance. The input would give me guidance, much like what Bernie said about the officials that live and breathe it. Yeah, I feel like there just needs to be more foundation, and waiting for that input to come in is I think that foundation.
I'm sorry, I forgot the last part of what I was going to say.
Go ahead. Yep, that's fine.
I think we can come up with a timeline. If we look at what the outreach committee's been putting together, they have a timeline for when we want to be surveying people and when we want to have our forums, and then we should probably set a date shortly after that where we can have distilled the results and we can start going through.
That's sort of where, Ken, do you still have comment? Okay, that's sort of where I was going. I was wanting to say, when do we plan for outreach to be done so that we can, and even if the committee doesn't feel comfortable setting an exact date, so that we can have a rough estimate, whether it be the third week in July or whatever, that we expect to conclude outreach and begin actual review. And I don't know when exactly that the committee would be comfortable with that happening, but I'd like us to get some reference as to when we anticipate that to be, if that makes any sense. And Meg? Go ahead.
I suggest that we come back to this at the end of the meeting after we've talked about the schedule for outreach and some other details of outreach, and not necessarily see if we're ready to make that decision. Because right now, it's hard to, we haven't talked about the schedule for the listening sessions or the timing for getting the 2 surveys out. And whether, another factor would be whether we want to have, I don't know if we're ever going to complete the listening. But my opinion is we'd want to have gotten the 2 surveys out, had at least 3 of the listening sessions, and done some more aggressive outreach to get people to respond to the website. I think we haven't done that aggressively enough. I mean, Andy and I did that, spent a fair amount of time yesterday going over it, and it was pretty interesting to see there weren't as many comments as I had hoped. There were still quite a few, as you could see, who looked at the list, and I think we should promote that much more aggressively. But I'd like to come back to this at the end of the meeting to see if we're in a better position to answer your question, Julian.
I'll let us segue into what you and Andy did. Do you guys want to screen share and discuss that? And maybe that can help inform our decision.
Well, yeah, what we did isn't about the schedule for the surveys, but it is looking at the first feedback. So it's part of it, but
Yeah, I just want everyone to have
sure.
to know that we've most certainly feedback is not done. It's just beginning.
Yeah,
But we have
good.
already received the submissions to the form you're talking about. We've gotten quite a lot of input from the League of Women Voters, etc. that I think we don't have enough information to even begin to conclude our public outreach, but I do think we have enough information to understand what the public outreach process looks like and the timeline of when we expect it to conclude. If we want to talk
Yeah.
about it a little more for
No.
us to go back to it at the end of the meeting, that's fine with me.
No, I think Andy and I could do that, but I'm encouraging Andy, Andy,
Yeah,
after we met, pulled it together. Just one quick comment before we were very careful not to curate what we heard in any way, or to even some of the topics that came up, we weren't sure they were charter changes or changes in practice. So we didn't even indicate in the piece that Andy's going to share what the kind of change was being proposed, because we wanted to be sure that we were giving you a summary of the information that's there.
Okay. Erica?
Andy, do you want to?
Yeah, for the sake of the minutes, could you, Andy or Meg, just state what it was, the piece of work that you reviewed, so that I can
Good.
give it a proper heading as a summary of what.
I think
Andy, go.
We went to the public feedback link on our website, and we took all of the summaries that were there from Athena, as well as the League of Women Voters report and Mandy Johanneke's submission, which was all of the things that were on that link. And we walked through it, and we, wrote down, we compiled what each of the suggestions was. If there were some cases where we, abbreviated it, but it's basically just one long list of all the suggestions that have come in so far. And it's not definitive or anything, but it's basically to give a sense of what the range of things are that people have said so far. And we can continue to do that. Meg suggested it, and I think it was a worthwhile thing for us to see at this point. But I think we'll get more, a lot more, and we can organize it once we get it in a more organized way through the survey, through the forums. And then, we may want to come up with, here's some things we're hearing, and then go back out to people and say, what do you think of these things? So that we're actually giving them something to respond to. But at this point, it's just a long list of bullet points.
So should we share it, Julian?
Please
Sure.
do. That's exactly what I was going to suggest. Screen share it. Let's go through the bullet points almost
And again,
one by one.
thanks to Andy for summarizing. I mean, some of them were very lengthy.
So you can see it's basically 3 pages I'll go back to it, and we can, we send it to Julian. We can post it and send it to you. It happened yesterday, so it didn't make the packet. So I'm just showing you there are 84 items as far as if we numbered them correctly. There were a couple that got split and got renumbered, but it's, there are things about the relationship, the powers of the town manager, the relationship between the council and the manager, the lame duck period between, when people are elected and when they take office, term limits of various types. There's an idea for having a standing building committee for public buildings.
That one had a longer explanation that you might want to read. If you don't
I
understand the reason.
It's basically that a number of towns have, when there is a building project, they have a standing committee that looks at that.
Rather than jumping around, could we go one by one, starting at the top or the bottom?
Andy was doing that, I think.
Okay, well, if you want to, you want to go through you want to hear all of them?
I do. Yep. I'd like us to have a relatively lengthy discussion on this, actually.
Julian, could I be recognized for a minute?
Go right ahead, yes.
I'm gonna say, this is important work. I hope we can set a timeline to do this collectively, but I want to reference something that Hannah shared in public comment. Yes, some people have shared, we should review what's shared in this feedback, but I think the work that I'm really trying to push for is we need to do this public outreach soon. And I'd rather spend time being clear about that now so that we have time to collect more public input and then carve out everybody in this committee should look at said feedback. And we should have that timeline. This is important work, but I wonder if it's useful to spend this time reviewing these notes, or perhaps lean into, we need to move on to the outreach stuff. That's just my 2 cent opinion.
Yeah, I think we just wanted to, Meg suggested we look at what we've received so far just to get a sense of what kinds of things are coming in. I think you're absolutely right. This is, it's scratching the surface, and it's not, what we will be doing down the road, I think, is taking, this type of list, but probably longer, and grouping, coming up with themes, and, so I don't know how much, I wasn't thinking that we would spend a ton of time.
Yeah.
Collecting.
I heard lengthy discussion, Andy, so.
Yeah.
Meg, you requested that we spend 30 minutes or more on this.
Well, no, I requested that we spend 30 minutes of our meetings talking about the feedback we're hearing. But I think Andy was trying that. I agree with Raphael that, that we don't have time to discuss each one. But I think Andy was trying to speed through to give everybody, in 3 minutes, a sense of what's here. Whether we do that or not, just to summarize it, and then we can send this out to everyone to read more carefully. But I agree with Raphael that the burden is on. The pressure is on right now to do the outreach. I mean, for example, I'd be happy to I volunteer to write a short piece for the Indian The Current that simply tells people about this website, and of course everyone could review it, but just so that a lot of people don't know about this website, for example. But I'm agreeing with Raphael, we need to get the outreach going. But I also think speeding through this, like Andy was starting to do, might be interesting, or if people want to do that.
I don't think we should speed through this. I think that there's a lot of really valuable information here, and we should, I at least personally, I looked at it before the meeting, and a lot of these, I just had clarifying questions, points of understanding, etc. Delineate more clearly the powers of the town manager. I'm wondering how many people exactly had this idea. I'm wondering things such as were they asking, was there a general consensus that the town manager should have more power or less power? Those sort of things. And I think that that being able to review this and actually ask questions, I mean, this is the outreach we're talking about here. And I struggle with the committee wanting to do outreach But then when we get outreach, some of the comments I've heard doesn't feel like people are completely listening. Anyway, that's just my opinion. Bernie, and then I'll go to Erica and then back to Raphael.
I think Raphael was first in line, but
It's just he's already spoken, so that's why I wanted to call him.
I don't.
Okay, whatever. Doesn't
I'm
matter.
the one for that. I think Raphael wants to follow up on a comment he made. So
Raphael, go ahead.
Thanks, Bernie. I think if we haven't shared this with, but there are listening sessions on the horizon with things we need to do. So I'd like to sort of spend some time just being clear about what we need to prepare for the listening sessions that are on the horizon, and make some decisions about the questionnaire. So again, I heard lengthy discussion. That's why I shared what I shared. Thanks.
Erica?
Where I think that this piece of work is, I think, going to be really useful. And I think that how and when it can be useful is in two ways. One is to kind of extract some themes of what we're seeing so far. And that's a process we're going to have to do not just with this list of 80 some points, but with all the other kinds of feedback that are going to come in. So that's a piece of work that I'm not sure the best way to do that is in committee, right? Like we can do the work of like sitting with this and pulling out themes and perhaps using them to organize listening sessions around those themes. So this is not lost work. For one, I'm not suggesting that this isn't valuable. I think it's how it's valuable. I don't think it's valuable to sit here and read all 84 points out loud to each other. I think we need to extract what themes are coming in, just like we will with the public feedback, and use those to organize public feedback sessions. It's critical that we move on that. And the other way that this could be useful is in the development of the public survey, the work that has to be done with the Collins Center. It can help us structure themes, questions, recurring topics. So I think that this work is valuable. I'm just kind of, I'm in consensus with a lot of what's already been said, that I don't think that the best use of time is to review them in a kind of numbered sequence as a group right now.
Okay, Bernie?
yeah, Erica said a good deal of what I was intending on saying. And I really think that, to use Meg's term, this list needs to be curated. You need to create some themes from it, cluster thoughts, so we have a general idea of where people are concerned. There's a couple of things I noted on the list that just can't be because they're impractical and awful, so off those go. I read through the comments. I want to thank Andy and Meg for doing this. This is a gift. I read through the comments, most of them, sometimes faster than others, some more carefully than others, depending on whether I've seen the material or not before. So this is a real gift, and I think we can use it to extract those themes that we need to then further focus on. My other question would be around where's the Collins Center in all this? We need our consultants are, and get some framework from them as to how we have this information and we have this plan for outreach meetings. How do we mold these to make them effective, and how do we begin to meld this information into usable data? So I think those are good questions for the Collins Center and would lean on their expertise.
Andy?
Yeah, I think I sort of saw this as like a little down payment. It's sort of an exhibit of the kinds of things we'll be seeing. But I think we have an outreach plan, and I think we should be, acting on that. And then if somebody said examine the power of the town manager, at this point, it doesn't really matter whether they said more or less. The theme is look at the power of the manager, but we want to talk to a bunch more people to see whether they are feeling that the town manager has too much or too little, or whether that's even something that emerges in other discussions. So I think you can see the thing for me that's useful about it is just like, these are the kinds of issues that people have that are bubbling up. And so, you know, term limits comes up in 3 different ways. So obviously term limits is something that we would want to consider maybe, or we'll see if it keeps bubbling up, but it's more of a very scratching of the surface at this point. And I really am looking forward to getting more and richer data using the processes that the outreach committee has been talking about with the help of the Collins Center.
Ken?
I would love to, if they'll have me, and if it doesn't violate open meeting law, I would love to help Meg and Andy curate or cluster this stuff.
Great.
So please invite me to the next meeting if that's okay.
Mhm.
And then Meg, real quick, I would be happy to help you with that pitch or the writing
Oh, great.
for the Indy and the Current and whomever else. So I'm happy to
Great.
look.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't think we nominated ourselves to keep doing this. I think it, or even to curate this. I think we as a team need to figure out how we're going to curate what we get from the surveys and the outreach that we do.
Meg, go ahead.
Just a reminder that this feedback we got was from less than 25 individuals, not counting the league. So it's useful information, but it's a tiny number of people who've contributed it. That's why I think we should focus on
I
getting.
have to clarify that, Meg. You said that there was 25 individuals, but then didn't you include comments from the league in this document, or did you not?
Yeah, so this
Right.
document reflects 25 or so people.
I would-
So there were plus the league.
I would argue the document represents 425 individuals because the league surveyed over 400 people, and then you guys on top of that got 25 extra. So if you
But the
included the
co-
comments from the league, you've already
league
included a pretty significant group.
But the league consensus process didn't include 400 people. It included about 30. And that was an amazing process that I won't describe now, but consensus is very tricky. And the consensus process changed and eliminated some things because everybody has to either agree
Right.
or step aside. But that group was more like 35. I think I can't remember a percentage of the membership who has to participate.
Well, there was a series of presentations
Right.
that preceded the consensus document. And if you
Right.
read through those 5 or 6, I forget how many there are, you find that a good deal was left behind
Right.
when the consensus document was. And as Ms. Dumont mentioned, the term limit thing was dropped out of the consensus document because it conflicts with the league's state position.
Right.
So I think I would treat the consensus document from the league as one input.
Well, but a special one because this process was very elaborate. And
That's true, but I can also go through the document and show you stuff that
Yeah.
is just not going to work.
So you're making my point that we need to do more aggressive outreach. I think everyone here is saying that
yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that an organization or a group has submitted something, that's fine, but that doesn't weigh any more heavily for me than some of the other individual finely tuned opinions that we've gotten and that we will continue to get, I hope.
So that reinforces my point that we haven't heard. I agree with you, but we've heard from less than 27 or 30 people, 30 individuals.
Yeah, it's not a good sample if you're, by any stretch of the imagination. So I think you're right. It just reinforces the point that we need to do more outreach, and we need to do it in a systematic fashion. And I will go back to saying, where is our interaction with our consultant to help us with this?
Okay, so do we want to move to discussing our outreach forms, Raphael?
Yeah, I think we should, but there are a few
Okay.
things we should want to make sure we have time for. The listening sessions check-in,
Yeah.
materials connected to that, sharing some additional details about said plan. And then we have the surveys that we need to make some decisions about tonight And we did in the subcommittee talk about like engaging the Collins Center for just a lot of support around a public survey. But the other survey for town, the stuff that we'll look at tonight, we should do that now, if you're open to that.
Yeah, let's do it. That's fine with me.
So Julian, do you mind if I preface this by, there was a conversation in that subcommittee about whether or not we should have open-ended questions alone, or what Julian will propose tonight, some questions that could allow us to get some quantitative data. So how do you want to approach this, Julian, in terms of sharing?
I'll let you share first, and then I'll share the.
Do you mind sharing? Because I sent it to you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I can share it too. Basically, Raphael put together one thing, and then I put together a different, just to give us two different options, and I would ask the committee to select one.
And it was Raphael and I put that together. It wasn't just Raphael.
Okay.
That's based on like Erica's.
Erica too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, for the sake of the minutes and my own clarity, is this a town staff survey, or are we talking about a public
Yes.
survey?
Staff.
So the
Staff.
town staff survey.
Officials.
Yeah.
No, officials or staff, there's a difference.
Both.
Both.
Okay, because, fine. I will probably not be happy if the officials and the staff are asked the same questions.
So
We
here,
have an, go ahead, sorry.
here's what I did, Julian.
Go ahead. And I'm about
I
to
just
screen share.
cleaned up Erica, or tweaked Erica's version. We went to all open response questions, and that's what I did. I think you adapted it more to add different forms of questions. So everybody has
did.
seen Erica's. I just tweaked it. We tweaked it a bit.
So to answer your question, Bernie, the form that I'm about to present that Erica and Meg and Raphael worked on, is it sort of clarifies if you're a staff or a staff person or an elected official, but it still asks the same questions. My form will review that separately after this, but I will start screen sharing. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. thank you.
So this is the open response version, the preamble.
So I'll talk people through a few things. So we heard from folks who shared like they wanted the intro to be a little more concise. So we did that. There was also talk, Erica, about what we would use, what platform. Maybe folks want to speak to that, but this just reflects what you did. We just tweaked a few things based on feedback. So if you continue scrolling.
Yep.
We just have identifying information, then professional role, tweak that a little bit. And then I actually tweaked it in terms of not leading people too much. I just asked R. I don't know what the initial question was. I think we might have noted what are, but I just put R there. So we just had the same categories in terms of positive aspects and challenges, town council and town manager relationship, all open response questions. And then we went down to topics of interest, if you don't mind scrolling. And it's just for them to sort of respond to these things in an open response format.
Great, thank you, Raphael. So do folks have questions of Raphael, comments, and then we'll see my form? Erica, and then Ken.
Thanks for sharing this. I had a question about if you could scroll down to the bottom where the topics of interest are listed. I was trying to pull it up in front of me, but in the version that I had proposed, one of the things, I don't know if, first of all, let me just back up. I'm sorry that I had to miss the meeting where the initial drafts of this were shared. That was unfortunately unavoidable, but the some of the way that I structured the draft version of this was based on a conversation with the Collins Center to kind of get us started and get some initial direction and pointers from them on best practices for this kind of thing based on other towns and for this audience, not for a public survey. That's a whole other can of worms, but for this kind of audience, staff and elected officials. And one of the things that I thought was an interesting comment, which I don't know if it was able to be in discussion in this committee, was that it's sometimes helpful. What I heard from her, what is sometimes helpful is to put a little bit of content, sort of charter content, into the question, to not to lead, but to sort of build in the ability to sort of point to the existing status quo to give people a starting point on which to respond. Not exhaustive, not like every article, every paragraph that's relevant to, for instance, department head and committee appointment authority, but a sentence or two that points to what is currently described around that topic in the charter. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, which is an option, right? We can just put the topics themselves and leave it as open as possible to just solicit the broadest kind of feedback, but it can also, what I thought was interesting was the idea of summarizing what is currently phrased in the charter around those topics as a starting point. Just adding that as a comment, not criticizing this approach, but just as a point of contrast.
So I don't
Thanks.
have your version. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't have the version that you shared initially, Erica, but I'm not sure that was included. The sort of reference to
it wasn't. It was in my notes, and
Okay.
that's why I regret that I wasn't able to introduce it in that way.
Okay.
Ken?
I guess my question was kind of along the lines of Erica's, but I was trying to read this not as me, the committee member, but as somebody in the town, as reading the public survey for them. And the topics of interest, I totally get wanting to kind of grease the wheels a little bit, so people start thinking about like what's at stake and what's up for grabs, so to speak. But I do find it leading. I totally appreciate that it says it's not an exhaustive list, and I don't know if we can make that language more strong to say it's not exhaustive, and this is not what these 6 points, 7 points, or whatever aren't what the charter's about. It's so much more than that. So I just feel a little uncomfortable that people are going to feel like they need to talk about one of these 6 things. Whether I don't know. There's just sort of an inference there that these are somehow more important than other things. So it makes me just feel a little weird if I were reading this as a town official or a staffer.
Bernie?
I sent along to the committee as a whole and then to the committee working on this questionnaire a series of questions that I thought were appropriate. None of them appear here. And so I would like to understand why the open-ended questions I phrased and formed that would get counselors to talk about their experiences and what they've found and done, and where they might make improvements in the charter aren't included in here. And I'd like to know if my questions, my comments were shared with the Collins Center. Because I think as I'm looking at this questionnaire, it might be appropriate for town employees. And I would start by striking, do you live in Amherst and how long have you lived in Amherst? If you're a town employee, you're obviously you're interested in Amherst, and you're going to respond. None of this questionnaire encourages the kind of discussion we've seen from Haneke or Dumont. Interestingly enough, both of them are lawyers, where you look hard at what you've experienced on the council and with working with the charter and where things may be made and where there should be changes made. whether you want to add something or delete something. You're not going to get that from this. You're not going to get this from from kind of information from this questionnaire, nor will you get that information from something that's yes, no scoreable. I fail to understand why people don't want to have give the elected officials, people who actually have lived with the charter for the last several years, the opportunity to do some open-ended free association discussion about what they've experienced. Because and we have that, and we have our now laundry list of topics that people have raised. And I'm sure we're going to see some overlap, and we're going to get better guidance. But asking a DPW worker to talk about the structure and allocation of authority in town government, my comments on that was, that sounds like a capstone topic in the MPPA program. I don't think that's the person who checks the meters is maybe they do want to comment on the structure and allocation of authority in town government. But is that necessarily first thing on their mind? And we'll even respond to this because their position has virtually no relationship to the charter. They might offer a comment as someone who, works for the town and sits outside the weekly operation or the grand warp and woof of the operation of the charter. So sorry to come on so strong about this, but no, not sorry to come on so strong about this. I start to ask the counselors and the members of the town's school committee and the library trustees to begin to describe to us their experiences with the operation of the charter, where it moves things along, where it frustrates things, and how we could make some constructive changes in that document. This doesn't accomplish it.
Marcus, then Raphael, then Erica, and then I have my own comment.
Thanks, Julian. I was just going to say I was going to agree with Ken's comments on, I think some of these are leading. I also do agree with Bernie's comments about some of the aspects of this. Overall, it comes down to, I think, trying to combine people that work for the town and people that act for the town in the same survey is a nice idea, but I think it may be, a bridge too far. I think we do need to delineate that because, to Bernie's point, someone at the DPW, I mean, even Guildford has got a completely different viewpoint than, say, a councillor. And I think we don't want to try and get, two things out of one questionnaire. So anyway.
Raphael? Yeah.
Yeah, Bernie, Andy, we did review your comments during our meeting. I think this process that we're going through now is one, we cleaned up what Erica offered. We kept these open response questions in play. Julian has another version. For me, what's most important is for us to come to some decision about what this will look like. So there's another questionnaire survey that you'll see from Julian. So this is just one option. We need to make some decisions about how it'll look moving forward. So yes, we did review.
Mm-hmm. Erica.
Thank you. Just wanted to quickly respond to some of the issues that Bernie brought up. When I met with the Collins Center about just getting some ideas about this, I did not present them with formats, either yours or mine, in order to just get their straight up guidelines on what they think are successful examples. Some of the examples that they shared with me were from other towns, and some of which followed quite closely this format. That doesn't mean that it's right for us, but that I just wanted to make that clear. I didn't keep your comments or my comments from them for any particular reason, just to get their as straight up a guideline conversation going as possible. The other thing is, I didn't quite understand, Bernie, from your comment, whether you just felt like the last part of this was closing conversation down too much, or whether the whole thing, because I heard you say, I feel it should be more open-ended in order to get the true experience, the true lived experience of people who've been in office, or in whatever office, in whatever capacity. So are you saying it should be more open-ended?
What I'm saying is that if this is a questionnaire intended for town employees, then with a little bit of modification, it's fine. It is not the questionnaire that I would pose to, or the questions that I would pose to elected officials, or the town manager, or Athena, or the finance director. Because those are folks who have a very different level of experience with operating with the charter and the council on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis.
Understood. So I just wanted to clarify. So it's
So
not
I-
necessarily the format you're saying, but
Hold
how
on,
it's
hold on.
tailored to
That-
the audience.
We're
I
not
would-
supposed to have this much back and forth, Bernie and Erica.
Well,
I-
if you somewhere, it might be helpful to have allow
Yeah.
people to dialogue, but that's not my call.
Raphael?
I had my hand up by mistake. I'm sorry.
Okay. Erica, go ahead.
I just
And-
wanted to have one last comment, which is,
Yep.
I'm asking the questions in good nature and to say, I would fully support, and it would be relatively easy to do 2 surveys that are slightly more tailored to those 2 audiences and their differences in experience and differences in what we want to solicit. I have no problem with that.
So I'm going to close this out. I'm going to start screen sharing my own form that I created that I don't think is exactly, it might be a little bit better to what Bernie's talking about, but it's certainly not exactly where you're going. I have my own personal thoughts on all of this, but basically I've been hearing a lot of questions about the Collins Center, and for the form that both Erica made and the form that I made, it is reflective of many of the things that they sent to us. And in addition, the council has approved the funding and authorized the manager to enter a contract, and a contract is in the process of being either found or written up and sent to the manager to be signed. And I am meeting with them this Friday for the first time individually at 4 o'clock. I'll report out on that. And after that, other members are welcome to join me at those type of meetings as well. So that's the first thing. And then I'll screen share this and I'll go through it and I'll explain what I was thinking like Raphael did, and we can choose which form to go ahead with. I personally have a lot of positives about the form Erica and Raphael and Meg proposed. I just think that the reason I created a separate form was because I think this committee has been asking for lots of public outreach, and we need to be able to aggregate that data into themes and pie charts and that sort of thing for our use later on in the process. In addition, we don't want the survey to be intimidating, as in a counselor or a school committee member or a town employee goes through this and says, yikes, they're asking me for 6 paragraphs about this. I can't write this and spend 5 hours on Monday nights and work a day job. We want it to be a little more approachable than that. So we have the same preamble. You've already read that. It's no different. I did include this in a Google form as opposed to AirDrop or Airtable, whatever it was called, simply because a Google form can be made into a QR code and shared more easily, and folks know about it a little more. I think the committee agreed that that would be an appropriate change no matter what form we decide to go with. So this is first questions. This is the second question. this is asking for people to describe their role. So this is a little different than the other survey. Bernie, I'm saying, let's know who's responding. I would disagree. I would say that all feedback, whether it is a town councilor or a teacher or a firefighter or DPW employee, is valuable, but it's important that we know it so we can put it in context. That's what that allows. This allows us sort of a selection feature, so we know exactly what perspective our respondents are coming from and how many people. Say we were to get all town councilors who respond to this form and one town administrator, we would be able to see that broken up in a pie chart. And then I have a Likert scale here. Strongly agree.
Julian,
Yep.
are you, should we be having a screen share?
Yeah, I'm screen sharing. Can you all see this?
I can.
Ken?
Yeah, I can.
No, I can't at all. That's really bizarre. I just see you all.
Really?
Are you looking at one tab? There might be a different tab. Are you looking at?
Everybody
there it
else
is.
can
Thank
see
you.
this, I think.
Thank
You got
Andy.
it?
Yeah, there was a
No
second.
problem.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay. Do you want me to scroll up so you can see the rest of it? Okay.
No, I was listening intently. I just was going to get lost.
That's okay. So this is the first scaled question, strongly agree, disagree, neutral. And then I did put an other box so folks can, if they don't want to put their opinion in a box, they can write about it. What are some aspects? I still included some open-ended questions. I think open-ended questions are important. It's just sort of having a reasonable mix of different types of questions. Sort of wanted to get both positives and negatives so that like we're getting a lot of feedback that's sort of negative or what to change. But if folks say, yes, it works well the way it is, we might not hear that as much. And that's important to consider too. I put a small preamble here and sort of broke it down, the topics of interest, rather than making it more broad. I wanted to give people some direction when they fill out the form into governance structure, and I have a few others here, just so folks know what we're talking about. Do you have a question related to a specific question on this, Meg?
Well, I just want to be clear. Are you saying this questionnaire would go to everyone, DPW workers as well as counselors?
This questionnaire.
Because some of these people, anyway, that's my question.
Okay, well that.
But I'll
can
wait
be
till the
helpful.
end. And
Thank you. Thank you. Budget process, I did a little bit more just because it's been such an active point of engagement in the community. So I have it on scaled questions here. I feel like we should get, if we want a lot of public feedback, we should tap places that are already of great importance to the community. And we've seen this as one. And then I do still have the everything else question. And this incorporated a little bit of Andy's questions, a lot of what Erica had to say, and changed the scale and how folks responded to it. I'll keep it up while we have our discussion. And my expectation by the end of it is for us to choose a form to send out and to clarify who we want it sent out to. Both Raphael's form and my form currently the plan would be to send them out, whichever form we choose, to the entire town staff as well as the entire group of elected officials, school committee, library trustees, town councilors, and former town councilors. If the committee wants to change that, we can discuss that, but I would urge you all to keep your comments to choosing the form and which form we would like to choose first, and then after we choose the form and which form we would like to choose, and after we debate the merits of the form, that we can discuss who exactly we would like to get that form. I don't think it's helpful to mix those two conversations right now, seeing the level of polarization isn't the right word, but that's the word I'll use for it. Andy, I saw you raise your hand first, or Raphael, I saw you raise your hand first, actually. Go ahead, Raphael.
Julian, I don't know if you want me to surface Andy and Bernie's feedback on the form that the questionnaire that Erica shared. I could screen share that for the committee to see. I have Bernie's questions if folks want to see them. Andy had 5 questions. I have those 2. So you want to open that up to this conversation or no?
Not at this point. I'd like us to sort of consider the committee's recommendation first, and then after we consider the committee's recommendation, we can consider the personal views of individual members. Andy.
I guess I'm addressing both of these forms where we are picking certain areas to point them toward. And I'm wondering if there's a more neutral way of jogging their minds. And I have a page up from the charter, which is basically the table of contents, which shows the articles in the charter that might be a neutral listing that we could use rather than pointing them to, you know, a few things and saying this isn't an exclusive list. So I'm wondering if I could share that just so people can see what that looks like, and see if that might be a way of making this less, you know, making it a little more neutral.
Sure, you could do that. I'm just, again, I feel like the committee needs to either formally vote down the subcommittee's recommendation, or should choose a form, or should say subcommittee go back to the drawing board. Those are all options before the committee. I think it's just difficult for me as chair to juggle what if Andy brings up something and Bernie brings up something and Meg brings up something, plus these 2 forms. It would be difficult to juggle 5 different form proposals at the same time.
Well, I'm not sure how we work as a committee to...
I would propose edits or amendments to the form that could be sort of done either in real time or sent back to the subcommittee to do, and ask that the subcommittee either work off those amendments off of my form or work those amendments off of Erica's form.
So I guess that's what I'm proposing, I guess, is that rather than the limited list and more pointed list that both of you have used, that maybe we could use the list of the articles as the grouping to prompt people to think within categories. And that's what I was going to show people. But
okay, yeah. Bernie, I don't have a problem with you screen sharing it. You can go ahead and screen share it.
I have nothing. Andy's, you wanted to screen share the.
Yeah, we have to. It says someone else is sharing.
Yeah,
so
I'll stop.
Okay.
You can go ahead. Well, Andy's doing that. Bernie, would you comment?
Yeah, I really think that we need to step back and take a look at both of these, because I think the format for both of them is inadequate for elected officials. And I was happy to hear that there's an openness to creating a different kind of form or interview process for the elected officials. The other thing I would say is when I go to our document center, there are no documents on the document center that were received from the Collins Center, which apparently some committee members have had access to, but not all of us. And there are no notes of discussions that folks have had with the Collins Center on the document center. So I would ask that the Collins Center materials that were shared be posted there so we can all see them.
Okay. I can work with Athena to do that. Currently I am in discussions with the Collins Center, and so is I believe
Erica.
Andy to an extent. The reason that
Erica.
hasn't been made sort of public to everyone is just because it's still, we have approved by the council, but we haven't gotten it signed yet. So
Well,
I'd
there-
rather present everyone with
To clarify, there are members of the committee who have referred to documents or samples they received from the Collins Center in doing their work. I would ask that documents received from the Collins Center, which are public documents, be posted to our website so that other members of the committee or people from the community can have access to it. I'm not asking for detailed notes on what contract discussions are going on with whom. Okay. I would
Once those
like to be-
documents are finalized, that can be done.
May I speak?
No,
Go ahead.
You got stuff from Collins.
May I
Right.
speak?
Yes, go ahead.
I had a 45-minute meeting with one person from Collins to get some questions answered about some best practices. In that meeting, some documents were shared with me live that I then used to create a draft. I have no problem sharing those. They were not like, it was not a document dump that then I hoarded. It is something that I can share, and it's not secret. That if that's what you're referring to.
I'm not saying anything is being kept secret. I'm just saying information.
That's fine. I have no problem sharing
Shared.
that. The
I
other
have
thing
two
is that
documents.
I did write up notes from that meeting. And because I was absent, I shared those notes through Meg. I'm not sure if those were included in the document packet, but I did share those notes with the committee. I shared notes on what I learned from Collins. I shared notes on what I proposed for interview protocols. I shared my draft that you all worked on or worked from. So those things were shared.
I
I have my
forwarded
own-
those. Sorry,
Wait,
can I just?
have my own comment, and then I'll call on Raphael, and then I'll call on Meg. So I have gotten two documents from the Collins Center. Document A is the proposal, and document B is the presentation. I've had probably 45 emails with them, and I meet with them tomorrow for the first time. That's the first time I've ever met with them. I'm happy to recap to the committee what that meeting is, and I'm happy to share the proposal that they've given and the slideshow. I believe the slideshow has already been shared with you, and I believe the proposal may not have been in a packet, but it certainly has been screen shared in this meeting. And the only document that needs to be finalized is an actual contract with them for the town manager to sign. And the reason I can't share that with you is because currently it does not exist. Raphael.
Yeah, I want to recognize the process a little bit of the subcommittee. I appreciate that Erica reached out to the Collins Center. We didn't have a contract with them. So we got some guidance through Erica about what they proposed. We adapted that survey for you all to review. Great feedback tonight. I think the question that we were trying to address, Julian and I, not that the questions can't be tweaked. I think a bulk of our conversation on that night was, should we have open-ended questions alone or questions that we can quantify? I think we wanted to get feedback about that. In terms of specific questions, we understand we might have to tweak, but I want to just surface that Erica got some guidance, provided us with this survey or questionnaire, and we tweaked it based on some feedback. I still think the committee as a whole should see Andy and Bernie's questions. I know, Julian, you incorporated some of them, but just to surface that as well. We're not saying where these surveys are done or questionnaires are done. We're just trying to get feedback from everybody here.
Yeah. Andy, have you been able to screen share? I don't see anything yet.
I did, but I figured that
Right.
the conversation was going on, so
Yep.
I
that's
can
fine.
reshare, but
No, I just wonder, go ahead with your comment and then I have something I'd like to.
But
Yeah,
I had my
Sorry,
hand up.
sorry, Meg, you're in line first. I
Just
apologize.
a
That's my bad.
a quick footnote that I did forward Erica's notes from the March 27th meeting. I screen shared them and then I forwarded them to everybody at, I mean, I have it right here that evening
Okay, and
at well, I can tell you exactly. It was at 8:46 on March 27th. If you want to, I might have needed to put them on the website, but they were shared. And I appreciated Erica sending them when she was having a, you know, at a difficult time. I appreciated it very much.
I
go ahead.
I'm finding it hard to review documents that we didn't get in advance and that I can't look at. I mean, just to have somebody scroll by, and then I'm trying to compare two things that I just saw scrolled by, and I don't know. I find that difficult.
I am having the same problem. I have gotten requests from a few members that things aren't ready to be put in the packet or whatever. So I cannot screen share. I can screen share stuff. Other members can screen share stuff, but really it shouldn't go through me. In fact, I think I'm going to make a rule about this, which is set within 24 hours of the meeting, before 24 hours of the meeting, have anything you plan to share in the meeting sent to Athena. You don't need to send it to me. You don't need to send it to the other members. Send it to Athena and tell her to post in the packet. If for whatever reason it's not in the packet, you can email her and ask, excuse me, is this in the packet? And that's that. Some stuff she might not be able to post in the packet. She's very busy, but that's how it should be done. Send it to Athena. You can CC me and send it 24 hours in advance, 48 hours in advance, within enough time that she can reasonably post it. And then if it's posted, we will review it as a committee. And if it's not posted, maybe we just shouldn't review it as a committee. And I think that might be the right rule to set. It might make the process more bureaucratic, but it will not lead to this sort of back and forth where members feel they're in different places. So I personally admit I could do better with that. I shared my Google form in an email to the committee. I did not post it in the packet. So that is on me. I know other members could be better with that as well. So that's where I'm at. I think that's an appropriate rule. But I am going to move us back at this point to the forms. Basically, I don't think we're going to get this entire committee to agree with what to do on the forms. I hear Andy has one perspective, which I think is a good one. I'm hearing me and Raphael might have a little bit of a different perspective, and then Bernie has a different perspective. So I'm looking for us to choose a form or make a decision and vote one way or another. Raphael?
I want to share, like, the questionnaire that Erica produced hasn't been changed substantially. We just took a few things. So people have had that in advance. We want to surface what Bernie and Andy shared and think about how it might lead to an adaptation of that document. That's fine. But people have had that survey questionnaire for a while.
Okay. Meg, and then
I'm interested to know, we discussed having one survey versus one for the people who were elected and another for people who have other positions. I found Bernie's argument persuasive, and I'm curious if others do as well, to have two surveys rather than one. I'm sort of on the fence because I was in that other discussion, but it seems to me he raised legitimate points, particularly the difference between someone who works in a department at a level where they don't interact with the town council versus someone who's elected. The school committee, the counselors, the town manager, and the library trustees. That seems to
I'll-
be a base question that we need to address unless nobody agrees with Bernie. I'm kind of, I have been persuaded.
I'll offer my perspective for you, and then I'll call on Ken and Marcus. Which is my perspective is I don't necessarily agree with Bernie. I think he has a lot of great things to provide this committee, but I think that having a form that says to the town in general will decide your position. Basically, like if they have a place where they can put their position as a elected official or a town employee or a school employee, that is clearly delineated. And I think that the way Google Forms works, we can break up their answers into town employees said this, elected officials said this, and that is enough to me to be able to break up their answers and make those value judgments. I think that I worry that this committee is heading down a path where we're thinking that for whatever reason, it is less valuable or less important to have input from a school teacher or a DPW worker than it is to have that input from a
No,
lawyer who's ran for town council like Mandy
That's-
Joe. I
that's
understand
not what I meant,
what
but-
Mandy is saying, but I think that I struggle with the idea that folks, like, we don't allow those folks to run for council, so we should at least have them have some level of elevated input in this process. In my opinion, I also struggle with the idea that we as a committee, if we break it up, to what extent do we break it up? Because I'm hearing that we want to break it up to town councilors, town staff, and how do we differentiate between a town staff person who does not interact with the charter and a town administrator staff person, if you will? How do we break it up between a school committee member and a town councilor? I think that's what that select your position is for in the form, as opposed to making 15 separate forms, which feels like sort of a waste of the committee's time. Anyway, that's my perspective. Marcus?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree. Sorry. I think we just need, two forms, right? People that work within the charter and people that work for the charter. So it really is, we can't have everything all in one. We can't have a catch-all because we have so many, two really honestly completely different scopes of experience, thoughts, out of somebody, a counselor. And we want to, like you were saying, though, we want to capture everybody's input here. We're not ignoring one side or the other, but there are specific areas in being being an Athena, being a Guildford, being someone that, almost like drives a plow truck, that side, it's one thing, the council is another. And I think we do need to stop trying to catch all. And I agree, Google Forms will help us split it out, but it's the focus of the questions that is the difference, that we can't necessarily put all in one. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Raphael,
Do you mind if I share my screen, Julian?
go right ahead. Yep.
Can you see that?
Mhm.
Yep, that's
Yes.
great.
So Andy, I think you surfaced this in your feedback. You talked about maybe separate surveys for folks, but you had these questions that you think could work for all. So I just wanted to bring that to the table in terms of specificity, in terms of groups of folks, or some overarching questions that there's some proposed here that Andy thought could work for all. So just adding an additional point to this conversation. So I don't know if people saw this from Andy. I don't know where it went, but I just wanted people to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Should I stop sharing or people want to keep it up?
I'd like to keep it up, but Erica?
Yeah, I had a comment, but I wanted to ask Raphael, are you sharing this? I lost the context. Is this?
Yeah, so in our meeting, Erica, we had
Yeah.
notes about feedback that folks gave on Erica's survey. So I have that feedback here. So we referenced it during our meeting.
Thank you.
Just sharing that here.
Thank you. My comment was about the question that Meg raised about should we have one questionnaire or two? And I wanted to address that. I think that there's a utility to having more than one version of the set of questions that we're trying to ask from people who work in the town in various capacities, or for the town in various capacities. And I wanted to just make a technical point because I gather that there was a discussion about Airtable versus Google Forms. I don't need to revisit that. I don't really know what that was about, but I just wanted to say that I had the notion that because I'm the one that set up the Airtable, I had the notion that if we wanted to set up, for instance, one for town officials, elected officials, and one for town staff of various kinds, that could actually be contained within one survey link, and that questions could be conditional based on what role someone says that they have in those opening questions, if that makes sense. If someone says, my role in the town is that I serve on the town council versus I work in the town manager's office versus I work on this committee, whatever, you can have a set of conditional questions that come up based on that inquiry. And the advantage of that, as I see it, is that you are distributing one survey link and gathering a set of answers that are conditional to the role, but all in one bucket. And that can be sorted by the role, etc. I don't get a commission from Airtable and I'm not selling it, but I'm just explaining that was part of my thinking in setting up in that format as opposed to others. And that there are also opportunities within that platform to do ranked answers, not just open-ended answers. So if you wanted to do scale stuff like 1 through 5, agree, disagree, that sort of thing can also be arranged. I just wanted the committee to have all the information about that, so that might be a technical solution to the question of, do we want to have 1, 2, or somebody said 15 different forms. I think 15 is too many. I think we can get away with 2 forms for the purposes that we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree, Erica. Andy?
I just sent these questions to the committee, the outreach committee, because they were the ones working on the survey draft. So I didn't send them to the whole team because I thought that might be illegal or something. But when I look at them again, I actually think that these questions, I'm not sure. I liked actually Julian's just, having a drop down or whatever, so that people can identify whether they are a counselor or a, just as a publicly interested citizen or anywhere in between. But I kind of think, even cutting off the ends of these questions, if we just asked what aspects of our town's government are working well from your perspective, what aspects have been difficult or challenging from your perspective, are there specific pain points that you've seen? Do you have any particular suggestions for changes to the charter at this point? Is there anything else you'd like to share about the town charter, or our government and how it functions? Pretty much anybody can answer those questions from their perspective. And if we ask them to identify what that perspective is in a question right before it, this is sort of initial data gathering to see what people will say. And then we can follow up with, we can probe more deeply with another survey if we wanted to. But it seems to me that And I guess this is why I sent this in, just because it's generic enough that people can fill it out from their perspective. And then if we have a list of, you know, the articles of the charter to say these are the categories that are in the charter, just to remind you, then, you know, that to me would be fairly easy for people to answer from whatever perspective they're coming at. So that, I guess that's what I was thinking of. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. Bernie?
Yeah, I want to confess to having missed Erica's notes. I understand how I managed to do that because I got as far as the link to the Airtable, which didn't work. And then Andy sent another email saying, here's a link to the Airtable that does work. And I didn't go back to the original correspondence to look at the notes. So I thank you for sharing those, Erica. And again, it was a very personally difficult time for you. My questions are, I think, somewhat along the same lines as Andy. There may be a little bit more formal in their phrasing. I also suggested that there needs to be a slightly different approach taken in terms of the school committee, the elementary school committee, not the regional committee, the elementary school committee, and the library trustees, because they have a different relationship with the charter than does the members of the council. So if we wanted, I still would argue that we need to survey the counselors, trustees, the elementary school committee, the former counselors in a separate document to acknowledge their positions and their role in terms of living with and making the charter work, which is at a different, in a different level, if you will. I'm not saying it's higher, lower, better, or worse, but it's a different perspective than would be shared by employees of the town. I'm not trying to denigrate any employee of the town, and I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't solicit their advice and information. Quite to the contrary. I'm saying we should. What I'm saying is that, again, I think the council, at least the council, president and former, merits some special attention. And I would, you know, go through and do a preliminary survey and then go back and do yet another survey. I would rather have them kind of put as much out as possible up front that we can then use and fine tune our other questions.
Bernie, would it be helpful for me to share your open response questions that you've shared?
The committee's seen them, I think, okay, because you can share them now if you want, but I think you've already seen them because they were previously submitted.
Just to refresh people's memory, they're here. So this is what you offered.
I struggle with this. Sorry, Marcus, go ahead, and then I'll share my comments on this.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, it was just a quick one. Kind of forgotten. It's been a while. No, I was really liking Erica's idea about the single, a way to access it, but then multiple ways through the question. I think there's obviously a need for core questions, which will be the same for everybody, and then targeted questions depending, and the ability to change that depending on answers is very good. I have no skin in the game on whatever particular technology we use, but it all sounds good to me. So,
all right, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking at these questions. I think they're good, but I think it misses, like, we could have the approach of what Andy said to have it be the entire charter and we go charter section by charter section. That makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think that it makes sense to have questions like this. They don't really include anything about the budget or the town or the town manager's authority, or anything that the community is currently rallying around. And I think that completely excluding that from the questionnaire feels naive to me. So I think that we should have a lot more sort of, I don't think we need leading questions, but we need questions that address what the community is talking about. And we can make those as sort of bland as possible or neutral as possible, but we have to address them, I think, as a committee. That's just my opinion. So that's why I wouldn't support these types of questions. Bernie?
This was written before there were any surveys done or any of the information compiled that's appeared in our document center. And again, thanks to Andy and Meg for them. They don't, it's intended to be open-ended to give the counselors, the school committee, and the library the opportunity to raise those. Here are the problems with the budget process. I think we've already seen that in a couple of samples that we've gotten from the two counselors, one current, one former, who responded. What the community finds difficult or puzzling or needs clarity on is certainly valid, and it needs to be addressed. This would allow us to say, just those topics come to mind in the council's mind, those topics rise to the surface. It's the whole point in being open-ended, is to get people to tell us what they have experienced and what they feel important. You may not get from a counselor that the budget process needs revision in the whole. You might get from a counselor that the time frame between the seating of the council and the presentation of the budget is insufficient. Those both address the same problem. They're both speaking to the same problem with budgets, but they'd be phrased very differently.
Meg?
So this is not intended
I'm
for
sorry.
clarity.
Okay, just to try to move this along, it seems to me in this discussion, which I hope people don't regret having, that people have said it does make sense to have a different survey for elected people from the staff who are employed. And another point, just so I don't have to speak again, it's always possible to do something that's quite general. If we had two surveys with a follow-up survey that's much more specific, that addresses points where maybe people didn't agree or where there was a need for more information. I just think we need to get it going, get something out there. But I did hear, I think, a feeling that it makes sense to have two surveys, but I'm not, I just want to test that because it's one of the things we have to decide.
Okay, I agree. I'll make this motion and I'll see where we go, because I have a meeting in 20 minutes and need to hop off at 8.
Well, so do we all.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, I'll make the motion that we approve the Google form with scaled and Likert scale questions to be sent to the town and school staff, as well as to the town administrative folks, and then that we send and then that we task the outreach committee with coming back to our meeting next week with a separate survey for elected officials only, school committee, library trustees, town councilors, current and former, and that be all one survey, the town councilors, library trustees, and school committee. That's a lot to put in a motion, Erica.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Could you simplify that? Maybe it's too.
Yep.
So
that we approve my form, that we approve the Google form that I shared tonight for town staff and administrative staff, and that we task the outreach subcommittee with a form for town councilor, school committee, and library trustees as one group. Raphael? sorry, we need a second and then, yes. And then Meg and then Raphael.
Julian, recognizing that some people shared like they perhaps would want more time to review, do you want to consider that in light of the fact that they just saw your survey tonight? Or I don't know if folks just saw it tonight. I can't recall.
That was almost exactly what I was going to say.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you have two things in there. Do we want to have two surveys? And do we like yours better than the one that the committee did? I mean,
Right.
we worked on that, so I
Those
didn't
are-
hear that second point discussed to a
Those are the
consensus.
two decisions we have to make tonight, Meg. So
Well,
if you want to
yeah.
split them up into two motions, that's perfectly fine. But we need to make,
So I amend your motion to be simply, we think there should be a different survey for the elected officials from the town employees.
I
Second.
don't second that. Okay. Ken?
My comments were the same as Raphael's and Meg's. So I'm totally on board with amending the motion.
Erica?
I also was gonna ask that same thing, so we're done. The motion's been seconded.
Okay. We can vote on that.
What is the motion?
Yeah, exactly.
The motion is to create two different surveys, one for town councilors, current and former, and one for town staff.
It actually was for elected people, so it could include the school committee and the library
I'm sorry.
trustees. Yeah,
I'm sorry, elected. Let me
sorry
make
to
sure I have
interrupt.
that. Okay, elected and
Employed.
And Meg, before we consider this, do you have any proposal for what to do with the two forms that have already
Well,
been?
that's the second question. That's why I think
Okay.
it's good not to have your proposal had two separate things
Yeah.
that we
Okay.
might not agree with both of them. So that's why I
Yeah.
separated it out.
That's fine. Then I'll move to voting. Erica,
yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Meg,
Yes.
Raphael,
Yes.
Andy,
Abstain.
Marcus,
Yes.
Bernie,
Yes.
myself, I'm a no. So that is one abstention, one nay, set 6 in favor. So that passes. Now let's move on to the next thing. Which is we are discussing which form we want to use for which group. So basically, we have these two forms on the table. Do we want to send one of them out to either our town employees or to our elected officials?
Sorry, just a quick, I don't know that we need to choose which form to send to which people, right? I think it's a case of choosing one form as a backbone. Which one, which way are we going to go as a backbone? Because there's no point in having one kind of collection on one side and another kind of collection on
Correct.
another. Let's say, well, we're going to go with basically Google or the other way, and then then we
Okay.
can look
Great.
at the questions and stuff.
Sounds good. Would you mind making a motion for one way or the other so we can? do that?
Yeah, I motion that we utilize Google Forms as a means of data collection for our surveys.
With the scale. Scale.
I would just say utilizing. The scale is a way of doing it. It's not the only way. So I want to avoid that right this second.
Okay, it's just that we had a discussion about open-ended versus not open-ended. So I'd like us to make some sort of decision on that because that's what the committee spent most of its time discussing.
I think the motion is to just start with, are we going to use a Google form?
Yep. Okay.
Then we can say, what do we
Sure.
want to do?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Exactly.
Yep. I'll second that. That makes sense to me to use a Google form. Erica?
I have a clarifying question. Is this a motion about what technical platform we're using, or is it a question about open-ended versus
Yeah, that's what I,
Likert scale questions? Because it's
Any of
very,
the
Yeah.
technical
very different
platforms.
things.
Technical.
I don't feel like we need a motion on what technical platform to use.
But
I
that's
feel-
what I heard, so that's why
Yeah.
I'm asking a clarifying question. Is a Google form is irrelevant if it's, or whatever platform is irrelevant if it's a question about the format of the survey.
Right, I,
The
um,
motion is, just clarify so I can write it down.
I was going with the motion of the technical, just because they are, we have one survey in one format and one survey in the other. I think that those surveys are a backbone; they're not necessarily the way to go. And then as Andy points out, we can talk about, sliding scale or open-ended or whatever. So, just think we need to choose one way or another.
Yeah, and I did, Julian, you seconded, right? So
yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem. Yeah, I was just unclear on what we're voting on, but I second.
I'm unclear on the motion for the sake of the minutes. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
folks.
That's totally fine. The motion is is that we choose to move forward with a survey based on Google's forms.
and I would support that just because I think people are familiar with Google Forms, and it's a more low tech solution, which I think will probably increase response.
I agree. Yep, that makes sense to me. Meg?
So
Or-
if one wants to vote on general versus
Sorry.
specific,
Meg,
That's next.
Raphael had his hand up.
sorry,
Raphael had his hand up first.
I'm sorry.
Nope,
Yeah,
that's fine.
it's unfortunate, Julian. I think like this conversation, we wanted it to be, I think, like focused on what we discuss, open-ended or not.
Yeah.
I don't think we got enough of that. And in terms of the subcommittee's work, like I wish we had made that decision and then moved into some of the questions about that emerged here.
Mhm.
I think Erica got some guidance. You had Bernie in play, Andy in play. You created something, but I still feel we're not clear about some of the things in terms of questions to be asked and focus, which is unfortunate. We-
I agree. It's very unfortunate that we have not actually answered the question the committee posed, and our meeting's almost over.
Yeah.
Meg?
Raphael said what I was going to say. I don't know whether to vote on Google or not. I just think it should be open-ended. But I don't, anyway, I'm agreeing with Raphael.
Yeah, I think that's what we wanted input on. about that.
That's what we're trying to decide, Likert scale or open-ended. I feel like we need a mix of questions, but that's why, because there was that disagreement in the subcommittee, that's why we brought it to the committee to decide. And that's what I'd like clarification on. I think we need a balance of the two types of questions.
Yeah, I
That's
withdraw
not,
my
that's
motion.
not
That's
what
fine.
the,
No.
Yeah.
That's not how it went in our committee.
also the motion on the table is about a technical platform. When
Yeah.
I just want to make clear, both technical platforms are capable of both kinds of questions. So if you really want to make a motion about a software, that's a different kind of vote.
Yeah, I'm withdrawing the motion. It's fine.
Can I make a motion?
Go right ahead. Yes.
Thank you. I would like to propose that we, since we're meeting next week, correct?
Yep.
And one of the comments that came out tonight in the conversation is that the two versions that are on the table weren't given enough time to be sufficiently reviewed by the members to sort of make a reasonable vote.
Yep.
So given what you proposed earlier, Julian, to remind us all about the timing of submitting documents to be reviewed, I'd like to propose that we submit the two versions that are on the table and give the committee enough time to look at them and evaluate them and not rush this vote based on a technical platform that I don't think we're making a well-informed decision about. and then have the full conversation as the first agenda item on next week's meeting. And
I second that motion. I think that is exactly what we need to do. And I, in addition, will ask that all of the committee members, when we have that meeting, I will be sure that both things are posted in the packet. And I would ask each and every one of you to stick our discussion at that meeting to the question of what types of questions we are asking, and not other discussion items about your opinions about the survey, rather exactly what types of questions we are asking. I apologize if I sound frustrated. Ken?
I had a question of clarification to Erica. Erica, did you say that you said something about us meeting next week as a full committee?
that's what I saw in Julian's.
That is
email.
what we are doing because we have missed one meeting and we need to make up.
I'm sorry, I
Yep.
missed that. So
That's
it's the excuse me, it is the 24th
Yep.
at 6? Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Thank you.
No problem. So, Andy, go ahead. We have a motion on the table. Yep.
I'm wondering if, since it was raised, thank you, Raphael, for showing Bernie's and my comments, which we didn't share with the whole committee, we shared with the outreach group subcommittee, whether we should have those in the packet as well, just for people's information, or if that's not, or if we don't want to go there.
I'll include anything that's sent to me in the packet. I just don't want a discussion outside of the question that we are asking. Meg?
And that,
Just
then
quickly-
that question is, do we want open-ended or do we want a mix?
Exactly. Yep.
So also I don't want, we haven't discussed the good point that was made that do you live in Amherst or not? That we can discuss that next week. Several people have said that's not appropriate, but it was still on there.
We can discuss it next week, but let's
Okay.
first, before we discuss it next week, decide on open-ended or not open-ended.
Okay,
And after we make that decision, we can discuss.
good.
Yes. Okay, I have a motion on the floor. I don't see any other hands up. Any other questions or comments about Erica's motion? For the sake of clarity, Erica, would you mind repeating the motion?
To summarize, because I can't
That's fine.
reconstruct it exactly, but my motion is that we table this right now, put all relevant documents in the packet well in advance of next week's meeting, and give the committee time to review and start next week's meeting with a discussion and a decision on survey format.
Thank you. I second the motion. I'll start voting. Erica,
Yes.
myself, I'm an I. Raphael,
Yes.
Meg,
Yes,
Andy,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Bernie,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
That passed unanimously. Good job, everybody. Okay, it's 7:57. Erica?
Yeah, I have a question about posting all of those documents to the document center. Is that going to be on you, Julian?
No, that should be, everything should be sent to Athena 24 hours before the meeting. I will personally send my Google form to Athena.
Okay, so the ones that anyone has in hand should be sent
Yes,
by whoever has them.
correct.
And a
If-
follow-up question, does anyone have any objection if I were to send a revised version, given all the feedback that came through tonight, a revised version of the more open-ended survey so that we have that in hand to discuss next week?
That's
Great
great.
Sure. Please
Okay.
do.
Raphael?
Erica, do you mind checking in about that with me? I heard some great things.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yep, okay, great. Yes, so the process is if any individual member creates a document, send that document to Athena 24 hours in advance of the meeting. I will do that for what I have, and if everyone else does that for what they have, we won't have that type of confusion again. And then the only other thing that I have is that Raphael, do you still have a question?
Mm. Just quickly, Meg, I'll share the listening session proposal.
Thank you.
For the whole group to review, because that's also a pressing thing that we need to get.
But
Excellent.
separately, Erica and Raphael and I ought to discuss whether we should have a very brief meeting before next week to change that, because the dates don't work anymore.
Yeah. We will have to find a time, I think.
So we have a proposal for 3 in-person listening sessions and 2 on Zoom, very specific where they'd be. We didn't even get to that yet, but that wasn't shared either, so we'll share it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And could I have one other clarifying? Ken and I have offered to draft a short article that would go in the Indy or anywhere else in this current, just telling people about the website, because it did turn out to have pretty interesting comments that Andy and I spent, an hour and a half yesterday, just about the link, so they can start giving feedback right now. Or should we not do that?
Let's wait. I don't see a problem with it, but let's wait to make that decision.
Okay.
Um,
It's just a piece of, yeah, let's decide it though, because
Yep.
it's been sitting there for several months
exactly.
and only 20 some people found it.
Right. Darcy has her hand raised in the
Oh.
audience. Darcy, is this an accent? Okay, great. Perfect. Excellent. Anything else? I am going to move to adjourn because I literally have another Zoom meeting to log on to at 8 o'clock.
Second.
Thank you. Raphael?
No, I'm good. Thanks for the work that people are doing. Yes.
Yes, okay, no problem. Meg?
Yes, and for the 3rd time, I agree with Raphael. Thank you.
I do too. I'm an I. Erica?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Marcus?
Yes.
Bernie?
Yes, and thanks to the subcommittee and to Andy and Meg for all the stuff that's been happening. Thank you much.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
I do. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.